And about a year ago, we explored the Dyatlov Pass incident, which came to light again from a series of news articles that were promoting a movie that was loosely based on fact, I guess you could say, and it was called The Devil's Pass. Now, the real event, the real Dyatlov Pass incident, took place in February of 1959. There were 9 hikers led by Igor Dyatlov, the group's leader, and that is what the incident essentially was named after, the Dyatlov Pass incident. And they traveled to the Ural Mountains in Siberia to a portion called Death Mountain, or the Mountain of the Dead, or the Mountain of Death. I've heard and seen many translations. And when they didn't return, search parties were actually sent to find the group, this group of 9 hikers, who were very experienced hikers from the information that I found. And what they found was the remains of their tents and their campsite. The tents were supposedly zipped up and Velcroed, so they were closed up nice and tight, but it's as if someone had taken a knife and cut their way out of the tent. Even the food that was, I guess, at least from the information we have, still on the plates or the utensils that they had been using, was as if it had been abandoned, seemingly out of nowhere, and they just cut their way out of the tents and took off down the mountain. Some of the bodies that were found had clothes. Some of them didn't have clothes, so some of them were naked or partially naked. A couple of them were barefoot. One of the hikers, if I can pronounce her name correctly, Liud Melia du Beninas, was missing her tongue and her eyes, which maybe that was, maybe that had something to do with what actually happened to these 9 hikers, or maybe the bodies were, they were messed with. Maybe the scene, maybe it was a crime scene, maybe the Russian military had something to do with it, which I still think was the main cause, was the main reason for these hikers dying in 1959, had to do with the Russian military, but, I could be wrong. At least in part, I think the military had something to do with it. Some of these hikers had broken bones. Some of them had internal injuries, but no external wounds or even scratches or cuts on the skin. And of course, that's from the information we have. That's from the photos that we've seen. And again, I think that maybe the bodies were tampered with before the investigative team got there to do the original investigation. At least that's what we're told. Some of the bodies and the clothing also had, I guess I'll put this in air quotations, higher than usual levels of radiation. And we also hear stories about UFOs, which we equate with aliens, and UFOs are supposedly involved because of these bright lights that were observed, some of them in the images, some of the last images that these hikers took on their photo cameras. And those could have been simply flares that they sent up. We hear about an avalanche. We hear the ideas that they just all lost their mind at the same time. And the official story actually claims that the best answer, the best way to sum up what happened was to say that it was, quote-unquote, unknown atmospheric conditions. And I always think that the military had something to do with this. I've always leaned towards the Russian military or some subgroup, some faction, some black operation being involved. And we've also tied the Yeti in before with the event. But I've never actually came to a conclusion on what actually happened. Something I can say, here's the evidence, and that's definitely responsible for the death of these 9 hikers. Well, our guest today, Mike Lebecki, he's an author, explorer, a climber with over 40 expeditions of experience around the world. He's also investigated the Dyatlov Pass incident as part of a documentary done with the Discovery Channel. Mike, welcome to The Secret Teachings. If you could, just give us a background on yourself. I didn't mention much. Your bio, and what got you interested in traveling the world and specifically investigating the Dyatlov Pass incident and the Yeti.
Yeah, great. Well, thanks for having me on the show, and it's really going to be interesting to talk about some of this stuff. But I consider myself an explorer, a climber, mainly interested in first ascents around the world. I'm a dedicated father, basically somebody who asks the question, why ration passion? The bottom line for me is, I want to look back from my deathbed and have no regrets and just know I live life according to my passions and what I wanted to do, and that's what I'm doing. I just completed my 55th expedition around the world, and, that mainly revolves around expeditions to climb first ascents or to explore into places, no one's ever been to before. And, I grew up near Yosemite National Park in California. I've always just been really passionate about being in the outdoors, especially the remote wilderness. I went out mountain lion hunting when I was 6 years old with my toy bow and arrow, and ended up shooting a rattlesnake. And out of the little bullet holes with my pellet gun, little teeny snakes came out of those holes that I shot the rattlesnake with. And I was just blown away. That's an example. I was blown away just by nature and the wild. And I think that really started it for me, is doing expeditions around the world and pursuing that passion.
What are some of the places that you've been? I know recently you said you came back from, was it Greenland?
I just got back from Greenland, actually about 4 days ago, and was out there, did some solo climbing, some exploring into some fjords that no man has ever been into before. It was really exciting, and there were quite a lot of polar bears. It was quite interesting, but all over the world, all the continents, 100+ countries, and a lot of really remote islands around the world. Yeah, I love traveling, love being out in the magic and power and beauty of the wild world.
We're also here with Mike D, my co-host today. Mike, are you on the line with us?
I am, Ryan, and it is an honor to talk to Mike. I've been trying to get a hold of him for a while after I saw the documentary on the Discovery Channel, because I was very interested in it, and of course we talked about this about a year ago. So I'm very happy to have Mike on. It's going to be a fun day, fun night.
Let's go ahead and get it started, Mike. I know you have a list of questions, and I'll just kind of set back. You're the one that brought Mike Lebecki to my attention. What is on your mind first to ask him?
Yeah, Mike, when you first traveled out to Russia, I know one of the first stops that you made after you got to the airport, you went kind of straight to that village where there was some confusion about that villagers might have killed the hikers, and you kind of cleared that up, at least in the documentary. Can you explain a little bit about the village, a little bit about the warnings that they gave to the hikers and what kind of transpired there?
Yeah, I think that you're referencing to the Mansi people that we went and visited, and we actually had to take snowmobiles really far into the Ural Mountains to go and speak with them. And this was just one of the several different parts of the investigation, just to kind of ask them more about the students, if they had any information. And then we did meet with a couple people there that you saw on the show, that talked about what was called the Menk. And that was sort of, referenced as a Yeti, but that's a different subject. But they talked about how, specifically, they didn't really have a lot of information about the students. And the woman that we talked to there, Albina, she was, I think, 5 or 6 years old when the students actually came through there. But I'm not specifically. Tell me what you want to know about that area.
Well, what the woman said, she said that they actually tried to warn the hikers not to go past a certain area, and it was and it kind of like an argument broke out, and
Sure.
The hikers went anyway.
There was information that there was possibly a dispute or an argument of the students sort of trespassing on their land, and from everything that we investigated, it looked like they were. It somehow said that they were warning them not to go up there, but nobody really knows why. It doesn't have to do, in my mind, with a Mank or the Yeti that they were sort of referring to. It may have had to do with military activity up there, and that's what we investigated so much, and if they were warning them not to go up into that part of the mountains, I think it had something to do with some kind of military stuff going on there. I mean, this was a heavily concentrated area for military everything. Yekaterinburg, which is the nearest major city, is, that basically started from military activity and people living there. So it all sort of points to military activity.
Mike, do you think, and Mike, I'll have to refer to you as Mike L, I guess.
You can say Lebecki if you'd like.
Let me do Lebecki, yes. So Lebecki, I've heard maybe the villagers, people thought that they were responsible for their deaths. Do you maybe think that theory kind of came about because maybe of this argument that might have ensued about them trespassing on the land, so people kind of associate that with the possibility of them being responsible for the death?
Well, I mean, first of all, with the Mansi people, we went out there because they were originally accused of the deaths because they're, the closest living humans to the area. I mean, they're native to that area. So they were tortured and, accused of killing the students, and they were later found out that, innocent, and they were finally, everyone said they're innocent, and they claimed their innocence, and I really believe that. But, it was really interesting. We only talked to a couple of the Mansi people, and they said no, they wouldn't have had any arguments or confrontations about trespassing, because that was some of the evidence that we looked at. But they said they would probably be warning them not to go up into the area, but no one really knows why they'd be warning them. Again, it's my personal view that there was so much military activity going on. I mean, evidence of testing different rockets and different, chemical weapons. I mean, there's a lot of that stuff that we found out. And I think, that could have been, if anything, that they were being kind to the students. The Mansi people were warning them out of kindness, like, hey, you don't want to go up there. There's all kinds of, crazy, weird stuff going on, basically.
Hey, Mike, this is Mike. Did the villagers, correct me if I'm wrong, but did they allude that some of the folks in the village went missing when they went beyond a certain point, or children were missing? Is that true, or I'm not?
That was, we heard some fairy tales and some folklore and some other, type of stories like that, where, they'd heard some kids had went missing, or some children had went missing. But I'm not really sure. In some ways, it kind of sounded like maybe those were told by the forefathers or the grandparents or parents, kind of to maybe scare some of the kids into like behaving and doing what they're told, and to not, go wandering off into the forest, because there's no real evidence that any children were ever missing. But we did hear stories about that. And I mean, one of the things you'll hear from me now talking about this is, and I think it's a good opportunity to make it clear, the show that you watched on Discovery Channel was not how it happened when we went to do this investigation. And so the editors, they twisted and turned this show in a very interesting way, that was completely different than what we did out there. And so the investigation was very real and genuine. We went to all of these different places, met with so many different people, yet the way they edited it was not how it happened. And so that's something quite interesting to possibly get into.
Well, let me go back for just a moment and ask you, how did you get involved in this? Were you asked to investigate, or was this something, it's a remote region of the world, you're a traveler, an explorer, and you just wanted to do the investigation yourself? You teamed up with the Discovery Channel. How did that come about? And then, yes, let's get into the details of how the story was changed from what actually happened as opposed to what was actually shown on television.
Sure. Yeah, I had done 3 big expeditions to Russia before going on this trip, and I'd heard about the Dyatlov incident, if that's what you want to call it. And just through the adventure world and the media world that's connected with that, through Discovery Channel and others, we connected, and they asked if I was interested in going to do this, to investigate the students' deaths, and basically a documentary style show. And so it worked out that, yeah, let's, these students were basically going on an expedition. I mean, these were explorers, and they were going to climb the Mountain of the Dead. And that's very close to my heart, and the fact that these guys were doing what I do, just a different time and a different place. And so there's a camaraderie between these students and myself, of going out and exploring and going into true wilderness, absolute, utter remote wilderness, where rescue is not possible. So it was very intriguing just to have the opportunity to go and investigate firsthand about the students.
Now, Mike D., from what you saw on the documentary, because you've watched it twice, correct?
Yes.
Is there anything in particular that you're curious about that maybe something that was changed by the editing, producing teams at the Discovery Channel? Was there anything in specific you were interested in?
Oh, sure. Yeah, definitely. When Mike uncovered the photo of the mink that was supposedly taken by the hikers, was that legit? And what's your feelings on that?
Yeah. So the one photo of the dark figure is absolutely legitimate. As far it is a photo taken by the students. It is on the original film from the camera. We went to the Dyatlov Foundation. I mean, all of that stuff is genuine and real. All of the investigation, that all the photos and that particular photo as well, 100% legitimate, no doubt about it. The twist and turn from that is, for me, I would have never thought it was, a Yeti or, I mean, it's really interesting because this photo, looked at high resolution and zoomed in, you really can't tell if it's a student or someone from KGB. I mean, you really can't find a distinct feature that, okay, this is absolutely, one of the students or something else. So that was kind of, I think, one of the interesting facts about the photo, and that some of the people at Discovery Channel really liked. They really wanted to sort of, play with the idea that this could be a Yeti or something. But I absolutely, completely disagree. I don't think that was a Yeti or Bigfoot or anything at all. The photo is genuine. It's real. I think it's one of the students, personally. If it was not one of the students, I think it was, possibly, somebody from the military up there, or because there was a lot of military activity going on up there and top secret stuff as well.
Yes, I believe Operation Snowman, was that one of the military programs?
Yeah, we read some stuff about that, but it didn't have to do with, I mean, there was a lot of stuff that was inconclusive in the reports that we read, but nothing that was, proved a point of a Yeti, at least as far as in the area of the students and the students' deaths. I personally, have a lot of interest and belief in Yetis and Bigfoots and, that whole phenomenon my entire life. But there is no connection, in my opinion, with a Yeti and the students' deaths. So that's kind of how this show got really twisted and turned. And
for sure, because the Operation Snowman made it seem like that the Russians were hunting these Yetis and that they were dangerous, and that's where it seemed like to me it was all fingers were pointed at a Yeti for the attack.
Isn't that the same thing that we see with the UFO phenomenon? We'll blame it on UFOs, which gets associated with aliens, so people don't think that their own government was involved in some type of human experimentation or with offing a group of people because they saw a little bit too much.
Yeah, no, and that's one of the main theories. And, on paper, there's 7,000 plus theories on paper documented for the students' deaths.
Jeez.
And, there's so much information. I mean, there's files and files and files of information. But that's the main, is that, there's military, sort of KGB, they saw too much, they were in a place they shouldn't have been. Or, the rockets, the military rockets that were testing different chemical weapons. I mean, you mentioned earlier, I mean, one of the things about this entire thing is how the bodies were found without boots, without clothes. Everything you mentioned in the beginning. I mean, there really is a lot of just really intense factors about this that are inconclusive, that no one can figure out. I mean, it really is just this incredible investigation. I mean, incredible mystery is what it is. And so you talk about all the stuff and it comes back to, wow, we really just don't know. But I'm going to at least make sure that I don't think it had to do with a Yeti. But there's definitely some mystery going on here.
Well, what about the bodies? And I mentioned it, you just mentioned it, the ways in which they were found. You, as an explorer, as an experienced hiker and an experienced climber, are injuries like internal bleeding, which could be incurred from some type of traumatic experience, but broken bones, but no lesions to the skin, no scratches, no cuts, nothing like that. Your eyes being sucked out of their head, your tongue getting cut off. I'm guessing these aren't your typical injuries when climbing, the side of a mountain.
Yeah, some of that stuff, especially in the show, I think was heavily exaggerated. I mean, some of these bodies were found, after the snow melted and after they've been decomposing. That could be anything: insects, rodents, another animal. There's so many things. It's not like all of the bodies, had tongues ripped out. It wasn't consistent among all
right.
of them. So there's but again, I go back to, there's all these little mysterious details that just make you wonder, and there really isn't anything beyond that, where it's been investigated so heavily. I mean, I'm just an explorer and a climber and somebody who loves to travel the world and climb and, go to these wild places. I don't have any expertise for investigating, especially, bodies, etc. But I do have experience with avalanches and things like that. And I personally ruled out avalanches because that's been one of the theory that an avalanche, they heard an avalanche and they ran out of their tent running and, the avalanche caused these injuries. But the terrain up there, it'd be really difficult for an avalanche to occur there. I mean, really, I can't imagine it happening. There's not even a slope there that I could see an avalanche, especially in the winter, how cold it is and how the snow acts there. But
I mean, at the very least, even if we can't say, yes, this was a Yeti, yes, this was the Russian military, maybe we can rule some things out like an avalanche.
I think avalanche is one of the things that can be ruled out, but there's not many that can be because you can't rule out the Yeti, even though I don't believe it's possible. You can't rule out the chemical weapons, the KGB, the military. There's so many possibilities. I mean, you even mentioned people think that aliens or you really can't rule out anything because it's just this mystery it's so wild how everything is with this case.
Mike D, what about these caves you were telling me about?
Well, yeah, another question though first for Mike. Do you think, in your opinion, that the Russian military got to the scene first before the investigators? I mean, that's a given, right? Or what's your feelings?
I do believe that because of the documentation that we found. They did have that documented before the actual rescue was. They had shown that they had been there before the rescue had started.
Maybe they messed with the bodies to kind of add an allure of mystery to it.
Absolutely, that's another theory that they moved the bodies around. They made it look like something that you couldn't figure out. They turned it into a mystery. That was another theory, but that's
yeah. But didn't the second set of the search rescue team find tracks of some sort that didn't look like they were footprints, but I don't know, some different types of big feet?
And that's another thing where. They had these photos of footprints and, they'd ask me, and this is, for the Discovery show, trying to ask me about these prints and these prints. And, they took my voice out of context when I was talking about something else. This is specifically in reference to the Discovery show.
Yes.
In reference, I can answer your question about the actual photos in a second, but for example, they'd say, hey, well, look at these photos. What do you think? I'm like, well, it looks like somebody walking with boots, or you can't tell. The wind and the snow, I mean, it can turn footprints to looking like anything. It just spindrift, which is snow moving with wind. All of this stuff can change in an hour. And so looking at all the footprints that they had and, them saying they saw footprints going off in another direction, none of that from the people we talked to or myself was in reference to a Yeti. That was just in reference to who was there, possibly military, possibly KGB. And the show was taken out of context and made it sound like we were talking about Yeti feet or something.
Interesting.
It is interesting because, in the show we go and we talk to other people who have had eyewitness accounts of Yetis. We talk to experts. And that's when, there was a family that we went and talked to. And I was really intrigued by them. I mean, it was the family with the kids who they went out to their cabin and they saw these footprints. That was really intriguing because they just had no reason to make this up. There was no reason to even for them to talk about it. And somebody heard about it through a friend, and it got on the news. And but yeah, in reference to those footprints of the students and going off in another direction, that was more in reference to when we were there about, this could have been military because somebody may have left the scene or several people may have left the scene there. But I think that was either military or KGB because you're right. You mentioned the investigation by the military before the rescue was set off. There was somebody there before then. I hope that makes sense.
Yes, totally.
I know a lot of the bodies, like I said, some of them were found with broken bones but no external injuries. I've done a lot of research on things like vacuum bombs that can suck the oxygen and break your rib cage. stuff like that. I think that's possible. That could be part of it. Again, it's another one of those 7,000 theories on what actually happened to them. But in your investigations and in relationship to what we call the Yeti, most people think of the Yeti, they probably think of this monstrous beast, kind of like something from Star Wars that just uses its claws to just beat people down to the ground, and then it picks them up and eats their legs or something. Have you heard any stories about the Yeti? I mean, are these violent creatures? Would they react in a way that would cause an injury like that? Or is this something that's kind of been perpetuated by pop culture and Hollywood?
Yeah, I think that's safe to say, sort of pop culture Hollywood, though. There are a lot of experts that really believe in the Yeti, and they talk about all these facts about the Yeti, yet there's no proof. There's, where's the photo? Where's the video? Where's, why aren't we putting out, motion censored cameras and all these places and getting proof? If this, and so it's really tough for me. I want to believe in this kind of stuff. I have my whole life. I've always been fascinated by Bigfoot or the Yeti, but it's pretty far-fetched to just to nail anything down. And, there's just no proof of violent creatures or not violent creatures. I mean, it just seems like some sort of hominoid, some sort of past relative of the human that either exists or did exist. And I would like to think that there is some sort of Yeti creature out there, but I don't think it's what the media or the pop culture plays it up to be.
Not at all. In fact, I think that maybe going out on a limb here, maybe the military even has an involvement in maybe genetically, altering humans or genetically altering another species and kind of perpetuating this myth for one way or another, one reason or another, rather.
Well, I mean, think about it. They could have. There's a lot of incredible things that humans have done to other humans, testing and chemicals, and who knows what has gone on in these secret places in the past. I mean, they could have just been people that went insane or they lost their minds, and who knows what happened. But go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I agree with you too, but the documentary kind of played up when you went to, I guess, where one of the villagers or a guide, actually, I think a hunting guide, said that this is where the Yetis sleep at night or the minks sleep at night, and you went to spend the night in the cave. Mm-hmm. Could you discuss a little bit about that? Was it played up? Was it for the documentary, to get kind of that thrill for the viewers? Do you think that was a real mink cave, or do you think it was just where bears go and sleep at night or hibernate?
Yeah, so we went to this cave. It was an incredible cave. I mean, it was just phenomenal. One of the most amazing things I've ever seen, actually. The way that the ice stalagmite were formed. I mean, it was incredible. And then there was a local guy that went out there with us, and this was, far away from the Dyatlov Pass. I mean, really, really far away. And so hundreds of miles. And basically we went there because, supposedly there had been Yeti sightings. And, but yeah, they showed me this thing. It looked like this really great, they called it a nest, but it looked like this really cool alcove where, a bear or a large animal could sleep, and they called it, a Yeti nest. Of course, in the show, they called it a fresh Yeti nest, which was kind of funny.
Right. Yeah.
And so it was like, come on. And so, I just want to reiterate, the editors took this, they ran with it. A lot of the footage, the reenactments, the guy with the gun, all these different things. There were so many parts that I didn't even know existed. We didn't shoot any of that stuff out there. On film. There was a lot of stuff that showed up in this film I didn't even know was there. And so I'm just being honest.
Yeah.
I mean,
no, of course.
It's just, not even the director of this show, of this film, he doesn't even have his name on it. He made them take his name off the film. He didn't want to be associated with it. And because we went out and did this amazing investigation, this incredible documentary of all the stuff we documented. I mean, this was a really genuine investigation, both the Dyatlov Pass, the students, and then also separately talking to a lot of people about the Yetis. And then this was a totally different deal. And the way they put it all together was completely different than any of us thought. I mean, the entire crew. But getting back to the cave, it was fascinating. There was no evidence of Yetis. We did this little drama shoot that we were told was going to be part of a reenactment scene, and then it was kind of played off as this is really happening. And so I actually did go back there by myself. There are a lot of stuff. It's like 80% of it really happened. 20% of it was edited to basically be reality TV or something like that. Mm-hmm. So we were all kind of blown out of the water when we saw the final. But our investigation, our documentary, I guess it was bland. I guess it just wasn't interesting to have on. I guess they have to spoon feed people this intense reality TV thing. I guess I don't know.
Yeah, people like the reality television.
But I do want to say, this isn't knocking anyone. We had a great time. It was an awesome investigation. I mean, it was fascinating. Great time, great people. I mean, it was really an incredible deal. It just, the edit was, it didn't happen like that. That's not what happened. Well, think about this. Before you ask this, you're probably already ask it. Do you remember the Yeti whistle, the noise that was recorded?
Yes.
And then was, we recorded this noise, this whistle, and then we had it analyzed by these experts, and you saw the wave, sort of the wavelengths or the whatever it is on the computer. You saw all that, right?
Yes.
The sound waves, I'm sorry. That was all completely made up. None of that happened.
Wow.
But here's the thing. I didn't even know about that. We didn't shoot that. We didn't, when we were in the cave, we did a scene with Maria. She was really scared. She didn't want to be in the cave. She didn't like it there. And just the way that all went down, we kept recording sort of Blair Witch style. I was always holding a camera. And so it was, editors are creative, but it's really interesting for me to say now that I mean, what else can I say? That Yeti noise never, that thing they couldn't, I think they said, I haven't watched it, for a couple months. I think they said, this sound, no expert could define, what made the noise.
Yeah, because it was made up.
because they made it up. That's why, because it doesn't exist.
Did you get a chance to meet any of the families of any of the 9 hikers and get their take on what they think happened to their ancestors?
Not their. We met a couple people who were vaguely, distantly related. We went to the anniversary of their death and the funeral, and it was beautiful. We met some great people there. The Dyatlov Foundation. I mean, all the people that are really involved with it and they really hold on to what happened and preserving their memory. We met a ton of great people. It was awesome. But that's where this entire thing is very interesting to talk about with you guys, because the investigation and the documentary of the Dyatlov 9 and the students was amazing. And they didn't even put, I mean, there was so much stuff that we documented and got on film, and people we talked, they didn't put, all of these great stuff in the film. Instead, it just kind of went, they got that photo, they found the photo, that dark figure, and then just, okay, we're going to make this into a Yeti thing. Mm-hmm. And I come to find out all the Yeti investigation that we did had nothing to do with the students, completely separate investigation, separate show. That got pulled in all together, like these people were, I mean, you saw the show.
Yes. Yes.
And so,
why did they add the? Do you remember the kid with the filming on his phone where he followed the tracks and then he was scared to go over the embankment, so he stuck his camera up and they show some kind of like you can't tell what it is, but it's another brown figure. Did you know about that? Did you know about that part?
I had no idea I had no idea any of that stuff would be in the film, and I was actually, again, blown out of the water. I couldn't even believe it was in there. I mean, it was, to me, especially that one you just mentioned, was to me ridiculous. I mean, it's like, come on. I mean, what is this? I mean, why would you even put that in a genuine documentary, genuine investigation that we went out was incredible. And why would you, I mean, that to me was just a slap in the face. Well, I didn't even know that footage was out there, and then they put it in the film. I was embarrassed for the entire film when I saw that.
Well, can I ask you a very large question, and that is, what do you personally think? What is your 7001 theory of what actually happened to these hikers?
I think, the stuff that we looked at, the stuff that we found out with, how they left the tent, I mean, unless somebody was there afterward and, put the boots back in the tent, took boots off their feet, took their clothes off of them, put it back into the tent, and made it look like that happened. If they really ran from the tent like that and were just hysterical, panic, I mean, I think from everything that I saw, I think it had to do with them being in the wrong place, which is military, top secret kind of stuff, possibly the rockets with the chemical weapons. That some of the things that we looked at, some of these chemicals that from these rockets would basically take all of the oxygen out of the air, and you would suffocate.
Right.
You would panic and freak out, and you would just go nuts. And so there's something about my theory, I don't really have a positive theory, but I really feel like this chemical weapons, this rocket testing, there's a lot of information about that. The KGB or the military stuff, I really think it has to do with that, because you don't just go out to this incredibly beautiful, wild place on this planet and everybody dies in a way that cannot be, you can't find out. It's a mystery. It just doesn't. So anyways, my theory, something to do with some military mayhem up there.
That's what I think too. In fact, basically from what I'm getting from this, from what you're telling me about the Discovery Channel, is that the movie that you worked on, the documentary you worked on, is just, I mean, some of the stuff is obviously very credible, but a lot of it is just as made up as the movie that actually came out about the incident called The Devil's Pass.
Yeah, and I actually watched that. And so, yeah, it just, and to me, it's kind of like, I guess there's just a wave of reality TV, and a lot of TVs just go into drama mayhem, and I don't even have a TV at my house, if that tells you anything. So, but yeah, I'm just being honest about the show. They edited it in a way that none of us knew. It was like, okay, whatever, life goes on. But what we did was really genuine and incredible, and all the footage we have is really amazing. And it would have been nice to see just, that documentary be revealed, because I think a lot of people would have found it, the truthful documentary of what we did, very interesting.
Mike D.
Even the students' deaths, looking at that, and also the Yeti, the people we talked to about that, but separately, not like, the fact that that it was pulled in that the Yeti, I mean, it was everything was taken out of context. They edited it in a way that just, I think it's evident. To me, it's evident. Like, come on. I mean, especially, but we have to remember, a lot of this stuff, the investigation was very genuine, but they took it out of context and put it in ways to pull in the Yeti that just didn't work for me. I mean, it just wasn't real. And like you said, the cell phone footage of that, his footprints. I mean, to me, I was like, you've got to be kidding. I mean, it just didn't add up.
It's interesting that I think it's good that you would like to separate the Yeti from the actual students. Is there any way that you have access to the filming of that? Maybe you can put together your own documentary and post it somewhere, or do you just don't have time?
All the footage from my own video camera, and but I don't have access to all of that, all the other footage. Yeah. So, but I mean, I think people. It's hard for me to tell, actually. One of the. Yeah, I don't. I'm just gonna stop. You can ask me.
Yeah, no problem.
Well,
no problem.
have you? You traveled the world a lot. So have you heard about a type of Yeti, Bigfoot, Sasquatch, mink story anywhere else in the world that you've traveled?
Yeah, in the Himalaya, in Russia, in North America. I mean, those are the main places that that's really had a lot of Yeti or Bigfoot. I think they're in the same category of the sightings, and people say there's all this proof, but there's really none. There's just this hope and this fascination of something else that's out there, because it just is. Yeah, I mean, especially after doing this investigation with the Yeti, there's a few bits and pieces that are really intriguing, but there's just no proof. And so for someone like me, I believe that there is or was some kind of Yeti or Bigfoot, and I think I believe that because I love it and because I want it to be true and because I want there to be that mystery out there that we still don't know everything. We still, there's still things we just don't know. And for me, without mystery, you don't have an adventure. And so I sort of thrive on mystery. Mystery is sort of a fuel for my life, whether it's climbing or being somewhere that you just don't know what's going to happen next. And so, but it's just really interesting. There's no proof at all of, the Yeti, Bigfoot. It's all speculation and I think hope from a lot of people wanting that mystery to be real.
I'm glad you're very honest and open about this, and this is one of the reasons that when Mike D came to me with your information and the documentary, I was excited to have you on the show because there's so many other shows, like I mentioned to you before we went on air, that talk about Yeti and Bigfoot and Sasquatch literally every single week. And they go out back in the back of their house and they find hair from their dog and they say, look, we found Yeti hair. Or they'll find dog footprints and they'll just make the hole a little bit bigger and say, look, we found big footprints. And they'll literally do a whole show about that and get mass publicity and make thousands of dollars off of it when it's all just a big scam. And then you do a credible investigation, as you did, and it gets lumped together with something completely different and put into put onto television where people take it and then they make it into their own belief system and then it gets misconstrued even further from that point. Maybe we can break apart the Dyatlov Pass incident, if we call it that, and the Yeti investigation, and maybe you can share with us a little bit about the Yeti investigation in and of itself. And was that something that the Discovery Channel originally said, hey, we're going to do both of these at the same time? Or did you start investigating the Dyatlov Pass, go there, and then they said, hey, let's go over and investigate the Yeti as well? I think it might have something to do with this.
No, they wanted to investigate the Yeti because of the photo. Excuse me, because of the photo the students took, because of that dark figure. And they wanted to see if there was any connection that, possibly a Yeti could have been there, could have killed the students. And again, I mean, I'm just expressing my opinion and what happened on the show. I mean, who knows if there was a creature out there that killed these people? I don't want to say that it's not possible.
Right, you're open to it.
And I'm open to any possibility. Just, again, mystery is maybe one of my favorite things. I mean, it's just like I said, no mystery, no adventure. And so I think they just, pushed a little too far of trying to force that belief of the Yeti being responsible for the death. So that photo, I think that photo was sort of the nucleus of that connection, sort of the conduit between the Yeti and this possibility that a Yeti killed the students was that one photo that you really can't tell, who was in there or what. I mean, it's a human-shaped figure. I think it's one of the students, maybe a military guy, but I don't think it's a Yeti. But this is just my opinion. I really don't know. And so, but no, it wasn't two separate deals. It was, hey, let's also investigate the Yeti to see if there could have been a Yeti there. A Yeti could have, killed the students. But within that investigation, it felt like two separate entities. Where the Dyatlov 9, we investigated that. It was incredible to learn about all the facts. And then it felt like, the Yeti was a separate investigation because we traveled so far away from the Ural Mountains where all the Yeti sightings and Yeti sort of proof or whatever they want to call it, exists. So it was very separated in my mind.
Mike D., I know you had some other questions. You said you had made a list of things to talk about. Do you have anything else that's burning in the back of your mind right now?
Yeah, I want to get off Yeti and talk what Mike is going to do next. I mean, he seems very interesting, an explorer who just goes off, does his own thing, likes to travel world, likes mysteries, just came back from Greenland. What is Mike what is he planning next?
Well, I'm actually, and yeah, thanks for talking about this is really fun to talk about the Dyatlov and the Yeti. And I do want to sort of, I'd love to talk about some of the stuff I have coming up, but I do want to mention, that show, that investigation, it was a really positive experience. It's something completely different than what I usually do. And I'm very thankful for the opportunity to be able to have met the people I did on that trip. And regardless of how they edited the show, and it wasn't really what I wanted it to be, 80% truth, 20% made up. It was a positive experience, and I kind of want to leave it at that.
Okay, that's fair.
But the show in itself, I mean, the experience, as I'm saying, was positive. the show and the result of it was, I was quite disappointed, and there was some genuine things that really should have been revealed and showed, and the way they edited and finished that, it was quite disappointing. But anyways, what do? You just you go.
You got to move on, right?
But yeah, I think my next trip, I'm really excited. I'm getting ready to go back to Antarctica, and I'm really excited because my 11-year-old daughter, she's going on her first expedition to Antarctica with me. So this is going to be pretty exciting to bring her down to Antarctica, and we're going to go do a bunch of skiing and some adventuring down there.
Nice, nice.
Yeah, so that's going to be incredible for her to go to Antarctica, and then I'll be going to Antarctica again shortly after that, and then up to Baffin Island, and then back to Afghanistan, and then yeah, just I think it keeps going on. It's like one expedition. It kind of sometimes feels like you've got this big expedition coming up, and then after that, it feels like, well, that was training for the next one, and then the next one becomes training for the next one, and it's just to be completely honest, it's just turned into an obsession, an addiction, if you will. And I'm hoping to get 100 expeditions in before I'm 100 years old. So that's a little goal of mine.
That's one hell of a goal. What is the one place you've been that you love more than any other place on Earth? Yeah,
I mean, that's, it's easy to say they're all different, they're all unique, but I'd say Antarctica is pretty special. The Arctic in general is very special, both the North and the South. The Northern Arctic and Antarctica, there's just something magical and beautiful and almost prehistoric or timeless or infinite about those places. And they're just there's something about being in temperatures that you'll die in very, very quickly, and get, and rely on the equipment, and you're being self-reliant actually to survive and to actually climb and do these things. The Arctic and Antarctic is very close to my heart, for sure.
Do you do what Bear Grylls does, take your clothes off and jump in the ice water?
I don't do what Bear Grylls does at all. Completely different there. I don't do that. I mean, I guess...
yeah, I'm just joking around.
I think we have a camaraderie of that. We love getting out and getting after it in the wild and having a good time.
Excellent, excellent. My question is pretty much wrapped up, Ryan.
All right. Well, I think I have one more question for you, Mike, and this is in relationship just to mysteries in general. I know since you've traveled the world a lot, and I'll kind of lump these two questions together for time. Do you always meet native people when you go to these locations, or is it just usually you, maybe a climbing partner? I know you said you're taking your daughter. And if you do meet natives a lot, do you ever hear about any other stories of mystery? Not even in relationship to the Yeti, but just in general, any mysterious stories that they just can't seem to explain?
Yeah, first of all, one of my favorite things about going on these expeditions are meeting the native people or the local tribes and spending time with them, and just absorbing the moment of now, just being in that moment of now with different people around the world, especially when they're native or tribal or living deep in the wilderness. That's one of my favorite things actually about going on these trips is the people, from the natives that you mentioned to just everyone that you meet along the way and back. Is, I've got to say, at least 51% of why I go is just the amazing people. But I haven't really come across any stories that are really mysterious. I hear a lot of great folklore and sort of wives' tales, or whatever you want to call them, sort of fairy tales from different cultures, but those are more just kind of stories that you can tell have been passed on from generations and not a real mystery. I've heard a couple stories about where there's some secret treasure that's been hidden, or they know about where they know where this treasure is and they want to find it. And
sounds like the Discovery Channel might want to get on that.
Yeah, they might want to tap into that. So, but yeah, that's just a note on the people. That's really a big part of it, and why I love to go out there so much is just meeting all the people out there.
Is there a location that you haven't been to yet and that you want to go, but for some reason you just haven't been able to set it up?
No, I mean, there's a few here and there. There's that are home to some really big granite well, I guess limestone and granite rock formations. Those are a bit top secret at the moment, but you know, I feel like I've been everywhere I wanted to go, and there's a lot more. There's many more places I want to go, and I have no reason to think I won't be able to make it there. But I just, you know, it's kind of interesting. You know, you can get on a plane and be transported anywhere, and get on a boat, and then you know, be self-sufficient with skis or hiking, or I mean, it's. I feel like you know, even a remote place, it's not too hard to get to if you believe in getting there, you'll get there.
I've actually been very interested in doing stuff like this my entire life. I've always had the perception that it costs a lot of money. When you first get started out, I mean, maybe buying all of the equipment and maybe, you know, plane tickets or whatever you have to get to where you're going. But does the actual climb or the actual hike cost a lot of money for everything to get it going?
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, it's always a good point. I mean, this is you know, I do a lot of public speaking, and some of the people I thank right away is Visa and MasterCard for the convenience of debt for your dreams in America. And I
Very
don't have
well
a
said.
trust fund. You know, I don't have a trust fund. I don't have any family money. I make a very simple living. You know, just out of high school, I dropped out of college to go live in Yosemite and live in my car and climb every day. And just was a climbing bum for years, and it was absolutely wonderful. And then I started climbing more and traveling more, doing bigger expeditions, and just, you know, working really hard, odd jobs, working in climbing shops or ski shops, you name it. And then just started getting opportunities to sell photography, to write stories, you know, to figure out a way, wow, I can actually reciprocate some money here. I can actually find ways to generate funds from going on these trips. And, you know, over the last, you know, 15, 20 years, the outdoor industry has really grown. There's a lot of wonderful things for marketing and media from these expeditions, from this lifestyle that's really been able, you know, been the reason I've been able to make a living at doing this. And, you know, on that note, when I'm up on a summit, when I get on a first ascent, I'm at the top, whether I'm solo, because a lot of things I do are absolutely alone, or if I'm with partners, you know, I'm there with hundreds of people, you know, supporters, sponsors, family, friends, you know, the outdoor industry, media componentry, you know, so many people make it possible for me to go on these trips and do these things that it's never just about myself. It's about so many people making it happen. And it's, you know, I just appreciate just countless people that make it possible. I mean, without so many different people, I wouldn't step out the door. So it's just incredible.
Well, Mike, I really appreciate you taking the time out of your schedule to join us on The Secret Teachings. I see on your website you have listed, it says, death and or old age is coming. We must live sweet. The time is now. Why ration passion? Dream big and climb those dreams. After all, it is not only life, but the quality of this life. It sounds like you have a lot of quality in your life and what you do with your family and what you do on the side and all of your explorations. And it's always an exploration for me here on the show to learn new things. And I'm very, very happy. And I don't get just anybody on The Secret Teachings. I get people who I know what they're doing, I understand what they're doing, and I know where they're coming from. And I've got a little bit more respect for you, more so than I had before, because you are just open and honest about what you've experienced, what you've been through, especially with the Discovery Channel documentary. So many people just want to push their work, and they don't really care about the facts, and they think that, it's just, you know, it's a cool story, people will buy it because my name's up in lights somewhere. And I just appreciate you being open and honest with us, Mike.
Well, it's a pleasure to be able to talk about it. And, you know, thank you for the opportunity to share some of the, you know, about the show, about the Dyatlov 9, about the whole Yeti thing, and just about my lifestyle. It's a pleasure to be able to share, and hopefully someone will get a little inspiration to go out and climb those dreams, you know.
For sure. MikeLebecki.com. It's MikeLibecki, MikeLebecki.com.